The crystal spires of New Althara gleamed like jewels against the orange sky, their surfaces reflecting the light of twin suns that had shone peacefully for 3,000 years. Children played in the floating gardens while their parents tended to the healing pools that made their world famous across 17 star systems. The Althea had never known war, never built weapons, never imagined that death could fall from the stars like rain. Elder Vextar stood on the highest observation deck, his forearms clasped behind his back as he watched the sky darken. At first, the approaching shapes looked like clouds, but clouds didn't move with such terrible purpose. The Crimson Horde had found them. The bioships came in waves, their organic hulls pulsing with stolen life energy from worlds already consumed. Each vessel was the size of a mountain, grown rather than built, fed on the corpses of entire civilizations. They blotted out the suns one by one until darkness fell across the crystal cities like a burial shroud. How many? Vextar asked his aide, though his voice already carried the weight of knowing. Thousands, Elder. Maybe tens of thousands. The younger Althara's voice cracked with fear. They're surrounding the entire planet. The first bioweapons began to fall, striking the outer settlements with precision that spoke of terrible intelligence. Where they landed, crystal turned to dust, and gardens withered into ash. The Horde didn't just kill, they consumed everything, turning life itself into fuel for their endless hunger. Vextar rushed to the communication center, his usually graceful movements clumsy with panic. The quantum transmitter hummed to life, its ancient systems straining to broadcast across the galaxy. With trembling fingers, he encoded their species' final words into the signal. "This is New Althara, calling any who can hear us." He spoke into the transmitter. "We are under attack by the Crimson Horde. 40 million souls cry out for help. If anyone receives this message, remember us. Remember that we lived in peace." The signal burst from their world at faster than light speed, racing through subspace toward the Galactic Council's massive bureaucracy. There, it would join thousands of other requests, be assigned a case number, and eventually reach a committee that would debate response protocols while New Althara burned. But the message didn't only reach the Council. Deep in the cold darkness, beyond Earth's solar system, an automated relay station that had slept for 50 years suddenly awakened. Ancient protocols kicked in, scanning the distress call for specific keywords. When the analysis completed, alarms began to sound in places where no living soul had walked for decades. The signal had reached humanity's hidden watchers, and something terrible was about to wake up. The cold bit into Admiral June Dahian's lungs as the cryogenic pod hissed open, releasing 50 years of frozen sleep in a cloud of vapor. Ice crystals fell from her face like tears, each one carrying memories of the last time she'd been awakened for war. Her body ached as circulation returned, but her mind was already sharp and focused. The emergency klaxon echoing through the ship meant only one thing. Somewhere in the galaxy, innocent people were dying, and the bureaucrats couldn't save them. June stepped onto the bridge of the Silent Reaper, her bare feet silent on the cold metal deck. Around her, other crew members were emerging from their own pods, moving with the practiced efficiency of soldiers who had done this dance before. These weren't ordinary sailors. Each person on this ship had been handpicked from humanity's finest warriors, then given modifications that pushed them beyond normal human limits. "Status report," she barked, her voice cutting through the controlled chaos of an awakening warship. "Commander." Minteho was already at his station, his fingers flying across holographic displays that showed star maps and threat assessments. "Genocide event detected in the Kepler system," he reported without looking up. "Crimson Horde bioforms confirmed. Intelligence estimates 40 million Althera civilians. They have maybe 72 hours before complete extinction." The words hit June like a physical blow. 40 million lives, families, children, elders, who had never hurt anyone. The Althera were healers, not fighters. They wouldn't last a day against the Horde's appetite for destruction. Through the bridge's massive viewport, she could see other ships awakening in the darkness. The ghost fleet of Terra hung in space, like sleeping predators, their black holes absorbing light and hope in equal measure. These weren't exploration vessels or cargo haulers. They were weapons of war, each one designed for a single purpose, ending threats that conventional forces couldn't handle. Lieutenant Park Jin was running diagnostics on the weapon systems, her young face grim with concentration. Reality displacement drives are coming online, she reported. Quantum torpedoes armed and ready. All hunter-killer squadrons report green status. June felt the familiar weight of command settle on her shoulders. She'd hoped never to wake up again, never to see another world burning while politicians debated response times. But here she was, and somewhere across the galaxy, people were counting on her to do what others couldn't. Signal the pack, she ordered, her voice carrying across the bridge and out to the other ships. Tell them the hunt begins. The ghost fleet stirred to life, and death itself prepared to travel faster than light. Counselor Ethera had been monitoring galactic communications for over 2 centuries, but he'd never seen readings like this. His 6 tentacles worked frantically across the holographic displays, trying to make sense of the impossible data streaming in from deep space sensors. The gravitational distortions were massive, tearing through hyperspace like wounds in reality itself. This can't be right, he muttered, his purple skin turning pale with fear. The energy signatures were unlike anything in their databases, except for one classified file, buried deep in the restricted archives. A file that most council members pretended didn't exist. His hover platform shook as he pulled up the forbidden records, his hands trembling so badly he could barely input his security codes. When the data appeared, Ethera felt his 3 hearts skip a beat. The signatures matched perfectly. Emergency session. He screamed across the massive council chamber. All representatives, immediate assembly. Within minutes, the Great Dome, filled with beings from across the galaxy. The bird-like Cathari flapped their wings nervously, while the crystalline Zorans chimed with anxiety. 12 different species, all united in their sudden terror. Show them, whispered Counselor Vexen, his rocky features grim. Ethera projected the sensor data for all to see. The readings showed something moving through space at impossible speeds, bending the laws of physics around them like toys. Humans, he announced, his voice barely above a whisper. They're moving toward Althera space. The chamber erupted in chaos. Some delegates fled their seats, while others began praying to their various gods. Everyone had heard the stories, the legends whispered in dark corners of the galaxy. Ghost ships that appeared from nowhere, struck with surgical precision, then vanished as if they'd never existed. Entire fleets of the most advanced civilizations had simply stopped existing, their atoms scattered across light years of empty space. I thought they were myths, chittered Representative Kexley, her insect-like features twisted with fear. The Proxima incident was no myth, Ethera replied grimly. 3 entire species surrendered, just hearing that humanity was coming. They never even saw the ships. Counselor Vexen's voice cut through the panic. Should we warn the Crimson Horde? Give them a chance to retreat? The question hung in the air like poison. The chamber fell silent except for the nervous breathing and clicking of terrified alien dignitaries. Everyone knew the answer, but no one wanted to say it out loud. Finally, an old Vorthan elder spoke. What they were all thinking. Would you warn a plague about the cure? The Crimson Horde had consumed galaxies for millions of years, their collective consciousness spreading across thousands of bioships, like a cancerous growth through space. They had never known defeat, never felt anything but endless hunger. Today, that would change. Deep within the living ships, billions of insect minds suddenly went quiet. Something was wrong with space itself. Reality was bending, twisting, announcing the arrival of something that shouldn't exist. The hive mind turned its attention away from the burning Althor cities below, focusing on the empty void where sensors detected impossible energy readings. Then the human ships appeared. They didn't emerge from hyperspace, like normal vessels. Instead, they seemed to step out of nothingness itself, black holes that absorbed light and hope in equal measure. Each ship looked wrong somehow, as if they belonged in a different universe entirely. Commander Yuji-san stood at her station, aboard the Nightfall's edge, watching the horde bioships turn toward them like predators, sensing new prey. 17 bioships confirmed. Admiral, she reported, her voice steady, despite the impossible odds. Each one is roughly the size of Earth's moon. They're launching fighter swarms now. Through the view screen, thousands of organic fighters poured from the bioships, like angry hornets from a disturbed nest. Each fighter was a living creature, bred for war and hungry for human flesh. They moved in perfect coordination, their hive minds directing them with flawless precision. Admiral June Dehane watched the approaching swarm with the calm of someone who had seen this dance before. "Let them come," she said quietly, her words carrying the weight of 100 forgotten victories. "Target their command nodes. Make it clean." The human ships began to move, and the laws of physics seemed to bend around them. They didn't fly through space so much as glide between dimensions, their hulls flickering in and out of reality. The horde's bioweapons passed harmlessly through empty air, where the ships had been moments before, when the Silent Reaper's main cannon fired. The universe held its breath. Reality folded in on itself, space-time twisting into impossible shapes. 3 bioships simply ceased to exist, not destroyed, but erased from the fabric of existence itself. One moment they were there. The next they were nothing but empty space and scattered atoms. For the first time in 10 million years, the Crimson Horde felt something they had forgotten existed: fear. The collective consciousness recoiled like a burned child, billions of insect minds screaming in unified terror. They had met something worse than themselves, something that hunted hunters. The real battle was about to begin. Admiral June Dehane stood at the center of her bridge like a conductor before an orchestra, but instead of music, she was composing death. Her hands moved across holographic displays with practiced grace, each gesture sending orders to ships scattered across 3 dimensions of space. This wasn't just warfare, it was art painted in starfire and blood. Phase torpedo spread. Mark 7 through 15, Commander Mintejo called out, his fingers dancing across weapon controls. Dimensional anchors deployed on my mark. The human ships moved like nothing the galaxy had ever seen. They didn't simply fly through space, they flowed like liquid shadow, appearing and disappearing at will. When the Horde tried to target them, their weapons struck empty space. The humans were fighting in 4 dimensions, while their enemies were trapped in 3. "Anchors away," reported Lieutenant Park Jin from her tactical station. Suddenly, the massive bioships found themselves locked in normal space, unable to retreat into hyperspace or phase shift away from danger. They were trapped like insects in amber, while human weapons tore through their organic hulls with surgical precision. Captain Juan Borm's ship, the Void Whisper, demonstrated humanity's most terrifying tactic. Instead of attacking from outside, it simply materialized inside a bioship's command center. The Horde crew was already dead from neural disruptors before they even knew they were under attack. Their last thoughts were confusion. How could solid matter appear inside solid matter? Down on the burning surface of New Althara, Elder Vexstar watched the battle through his shelter's cracked dome. What he saw defied everything he knew about combat. The humans weren't just fighting the invasion, they were hunting each bite with the methodical precision of gardeners pruning diseased branches. "Look how they move," whispered his aide, pointing at the display screen showing the space battle. "They're everywhere at once, but never where the enemy expects them." One by one, the massive bioships died, not in explosive battles of attrition, but in clean, efficient executions. Each human ship seemed to know exactly where to strike, exactly how much force to use. They wasted nothing, no energy, no ammunition, no lives. "They're not just soldiers," Vexstar murmured, watching a bioship the size of a mountain simply collapse into itself after a single human torpedo strike. "They're something else entirely, something that turns war into a science." Above them, Admiral June continued her deadly symphony, and the Crimson Horde learned what it meant to be prey. The Crimson Horde's collective scream of pain and rage rippled through subspace, a psychic howl that shattered the minds of telepathic species across 17 star systems. Their losses were catastrophic. Over half their bioships reduced to drifting organic matter in less than an hour, for beings that had devoured entire civilizations without breaking stride. This defeat was unthinkable, but the Horde had one final card to play. From the dark space between dimensions, something massive began to emerge. The World Eater Mortar had been sleeping in the void, digesting the remains of 3 solar systems it had consumed during the last century. Now it stirred, answering the desperate call of its dying children. Lieutenant Han Soman's face went pale as her sensors began registering the impossible readings. "Admiral," she called out, her voice tight with barely controlled fear, "something big is coming through. Energy readings are completely off the charts. That thing, it could crack a moon in half just by thinking about it." The creature that emerged from hyperspace was beyond description. It wasn't just a ship, it was a living planet. Its surface covered in millions of feeding tentacles that could strip the flesh from worlds. Organic weapons the size of mountain ranges pulsed along its hull, each one capable of destroying entire fleets. This was the Horde's ultimate creation, a bioweapon that had ended civilizations by simply existing near them. Admiral June Daehan studied the approaching horror through the bridge's main display, watching as space itself seemed to bend around the creature's massive bulk. She'd seen terrible things in her long career: planet killers, reality bombs, weapons that could unravel the fabric of existence itself. But this thing made all of them look like children's toys. "Signal Fleet Command," she ordered quietly, her voice cutting through the terrified silence on the bridge. "Request immediate authorization for Protocol 7. The bridge fell completely silent. Even the hardened veterans of humanity's secret wars knew what those words meant. Protocol 7 was the weapon they hoped they'd never have to use, the final solution that came with a psychological evaluation for every crew member afterward. "Ma'am," Commander Min Taeho's voice was barely above a whisper, "are you absolutely certain? Once we cross that line..." Admiral June's eyes never left the approaching monstrosity as it began charging weapons that could vaporize continents. Around them, space itself groaned under the creature's presence, reality bending like heated metal. "Sometimes," she said softly, "to preserve life, you must become death itself." The authorization codes came through 30 seconds later. The moment Admiral June Daehan received authorization, everything changed. Across the human fleet, safety protocols that had been active for 50 years suddenly disengaged. Warning lights flashed red throughout every bridge as systems that were never meant to be used came online. What happened next would haunt the survivors for the rest of their lives. The Silent Reaper began to unfold like some impossible origami nightmare. Its hull, which had seemed solid and normal moments before, started reshaping itself into geometric patterns that shouldn't exist in 3-dimensional space. Metal flowed like liquid, revealing weapon systems hidden beneath layers of protective armor. The ship grew larger, more complex, until looking at it directly caused physical pain. "Dear God," whispered Lieutenant Park Jin, covering her eyes as tears streamed down her face. "What are we?" The other ships in the fleet followed suit, each one transforming into something that belonged in the nightmares of gods. Reality bent and twisted around them as they accessed technologies that made the World Eater look like a stone axe compared to a nuclear reactor. These weren't warships, they were restraint systems. Cages built to contain humanity's most terrible innovations. Down on New Althara, Elder Vextar watched through his shelter's dome as the human fleet revealed its true nature. The crystalline being had lived for over 1,000 years, but nothing had prepared him for this. They weren't hiding weapons, he whispered in growing horror. They were hiding themselves. Captain Yuji-san's voice came across the fleet communications, steady despite the cosmic horror unfolding around them. Firing solutions locked on target. All ships report ready. Execute, Admiral June ordered. What followed couldn't really be called a battle. The human weapons didn't fire in any conventional sense. They simply reached out and touched the World Eater across impossible distances. Reality itself became the ammunition. Space and time twisted into shapes that violated every natural law. The engagement lasted exactly 4 minutes and 17 seconds. When it ended, the creature that had devoured solar systems existed only as scattered atoms spread across several light years of empty space. It hadn't been destroyed, had been edited out of existence itself. The surviving horde, by those few that remained after witnessing their ultimate weapon unmade, broadcast something they had never transmitted in 10 million years of conquest. Complete and unconditional surrender. In the silence that followed, the human fleet began folding back into their harmless disguises, angels putting away their terrible wings. The silence after the battle was almost louder than the fighting itself. Where moments before space had been filled with the screams of dying bioships and the terrible sound of reality tearing apart, now there was only the gentle hum of human medical vessels descending toward the shattered world below. Admiral June Daehan watched from her command deck as the same hands that had just wielded weapons capable of unmaking existence now cradled injured Althara children with infinite care. Lieutenant Park Jin, who had operated reality-bending cannons minutes earlier, was now helping elderly crystalline beings find shelter among the rubble of their crystal cities. The transformation was complete and instantaneous. These soldiers didn't just switch from warriors to healers, they became something else entirely. Their movements were careful, precise, as if they understood that beings who had just witnessed such cosmic horror needed gentleness more than medicine. Elder Vextar made his way through the ruins of his once beautiful city, his forearms picking carefully through debris that sparkled like broken dreams. When he found Admiral June surveying the damage, her face was heavy with the weight of necessary choices. "Your people," he said quietly, his voice carrying the wisdom of centuries. "You've done this before." It wasn't a question. The precision, the efficiency, the way her soldiers moved through disaster zones like they'd practiced this dance 1,000 times. Everything spoke of experience earned through repetition. June nodded slowly, watching one of her medics gently bandage a young Althara's fractured arm. "For 3 centuries, she admitted, every genocidal species that rose from the darkness, every stellar plague that threatened to consume innocent worlds, every civilization-ending horror that the Council couldn't handle, we've been cleaning up the galaxy's nightmares so others could sleep peacefully in their beds." The old Althara's crystalline features shifted as understanding dawned. His people were healers by nature, tending to gardens and growing things. He recognized the pattern now. "You're gardeners," he whispered. "Gardeners with very sharp tools," Admiral June confirmed, gesturing toward where her ships hung in orbit, like sleeping dragons. "The Galactic Council never knew we existed. We preferred it that way. Easier to do the necessary work when nobody's watching. Nobody's asking uncomfortable questions about methods." But even as she spoke, June knew those days were ending. You couldn't unleash Protocol 7 and expect the galaxy to forget what they'd witnessed. The secret was out now, and humanity would have to face the consequences of 3 centuries of hidden guardianship. The Great Council chamber had never been so quiet. Representatives from hundreds of species sat in stunned silence as Admiral June Daehan walked to the center podium, her boots echoing across the marble floor like thunder. For 3 centuries, humanity had been nothing more than whispered rumors and classified files. Now their most feared admiral stood before the galaxy's leaders, no longer hiding in shadows. She didn't look like a monster. Average height, graying hair, scars that spoke of battles fought and won. But everyone in that chamber had seen the recordings from New Althara. They knew what those human hands were capable of unleashing. "We've been your silent guardians for 300 years, June announced, her voice carrying clearly to every corner of the vast space. Every night you slept peacefully. We were out there in the darkness, dealing with things that would have given you nightmares. The void spawn of Sector 7, the reality plague that almost consumed the Andromeda Spiral, the machine gods of the Dead Zone. You never knew they existed because we made sure they stopped existing." The holographic display behind her showed star charts marking dozens of incidents, entire civilizations that had simply vanished from galactic records, their names erased along with their threat to innocent worlds. "But secrecy has its limits," she continued. "After what happened at New Althara, the galaxy knows we exist, so humanity offers you a choice." Her gesture encompassed the assembled delegates. "Accept our protection openly and prosper under our watchful care, or—" The display changed to show the complete annihilation of the Crimson Horde. Billions of bioships reduced to scattered atoms in minutes. Counselor Ethera's tentacles trembled as he found his voice. "And if we refuse your protection, Admiral J—" Smile was colder than the vacuum between stars. Even the Crimson Horde, after 10 million years of consuming galaxies, chose surrender over extinction when they saw what we could do. I trust that civilized beings will make the wiser choice." Across the chamber, delegates whispered among themselves in dozens of languages. But the message was clear in every tongue. Resistance was not an option. Far beyond the council chambers, in the dark spaces between stars, sleeping Reaper fleets received new coordinates. Automated systems began scanning for threats not yet born, weapons preparing for wars not yet fought. Humanity's gardeners were sharpening their tools, ready to tend their expanded garden. The age of hidden guardians was over. The age of open protection had begun, and the galaxy would never be the same.